What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, consciousness, and spirituality. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Brandy Gillmore. Brandy is a researcher and mind-body healing expert who's been captivating audiences worldwide with her incredible ability to demonstrate radical healing using only the mind. And she's even shown proof of the incredible healing results using medical thermal imaging, which we'll talk about in the show. And due to the breakthroughs that she's made, her case studies have been published in a prestigious medical journal. And when she first started her research, she'd have never guessed that her own mind would hold the key to her healing. And in her new book, Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body, Brandy shares the hidden research that is the key to her success. And she's also become a friend of mine, and I'm in deep admiration of her gift as a healer. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Brandy.
Yasmin, it is so wonderful to be here with you on your show and also as a friend. I just absolutely adore you. And so it's such a pleasure.
Oh, likewise, Brandy. So, Brandy, to kick it off, how can people heal themselves through mind-body techniques? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. As you mentioned in the beginning, the idea of healing with the mind for me initially would have sounded completely impossible. And what I do now to demonstrate healing, even under medical equipment, is I have people identify specific mindset, like a specific emotion, if you will, but also specific emotional patterns and ways of thinking, and then radically transform it. And the reason that I say ways of thinking is because in some cases it can be an emotion. In some cases it can be even part of a person's identity. So it's a little complex, but to simplify, that's what I help people to do, is identify what is the glitch, so to speak, in the mind, or what are the glitches, and then shifting those and changing those. And that's when I see people to get radical results.
So, Brandy, what are some of the common themes that show up in your work when it comes to like specific emotions or even specific belief systems that come from identity that you see over and over again? Like what sort of strikes you as like important to understand right now about culture?
I would actually say even culture can play a part of it, but I guess if I were to kind of simplify this and make it accessible, I would say this. Going through my own injury, the more I started to research the mind, the more I could see that there were a lot of misconceptions regarding healing. And one thing that was really eye-opening was multiple personality disorder. So as I started, researching healing and the mind and neuroscience and all of these things, journals on research journals, medical journals on multiple personality disorder have shown time and time again that a person with multiple personality disorder can have different ailments when they're in different personalities. They could have high blood pressure in one, but not another. They could have asthma or neck pain or back pain in one, but not in another personality. And so when we look at it, it's not necessarily cultural. I mean, we can see that there are, of course, certain cultures that are more prone to certain illnesses, for sure. But I would also say, if we look at this very, very simply, we can also look at different emotions affect the body differently. Very simply, if somebody's embarrassed, their face can turn red. Or if somebody has a anxiety, they can have a panic attack, racing heart, shortness of breath. And of course, going through my injury, I had thought to myself, here I was, wheelchair, walker, cane, in extreme pain, neurological disorder, all of these things. I thought, I'm going to need a lot more than emotions to heal my body. But as I looked more into emotions and the profound impact they could have, we've all heard maybe before of the widowhood effect, where a senior can lose a spouse and they have a higher rate of death, or even broken heart syndrome, where somebody can lose a loved one and die of a broken heart, or scared to death, where somebody can be so scared their heart suddenly stops. And the more I started looking at emotions and realizing they could have a profound impact, or even, current research even shows, it suggests that autoimmune conditions can be caused by stress. And so that's what I really started looking at is emotional patterns, and looking at transforming those. Now, Yasmin, part of your question was also, how does self-image fit in? And what can happen is a person's identity, they may have built into their identity that they are a sick person, or that they're like their mother or father who is sick. And so they see themselves that way. And then it becomes part of their mindset of how they see themselves. And that can keep the body from healing itself. So there are a lot of just different key factors, if you will, in the mind that can influence illness and healing.
So fascinating. Yeah. Like even just the multiple personality disorder piece is just, I mean, it's so fascinating. You're the same person, but you go into a different identity, right? Your self-image is different. And then all of a sudden the emotional cocktail that you produce is different. And that creates a whole set of body chemistry and, so I'm really curious actually, before we get into to this, because I could double click and go down this rabbit hole with you. I want you to share with our audience, what you experienced, and also what was the process or the journey and the steps that you took in order to get to a place of really this like remarkable healing, so I'd love for you to share that.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, I did not have multiple personality disorder. So, but yes, a
Yes.
person, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just you said, well, you could be in one personality. I just want to just
Yeah.
clarify, just
Yeah.
and I have compassion, so much compassion for anybody who does, because some of the studies that I had read were even about Holocaust survivors who had developed multiple personality disorder from that. So I have absolute compassion, but that was something that I thought during my injuries. I really thought, okay, well, how do I get a mindset that will heal my body, that will create those changes? And to answer your question, Yasmin, basically, long story short, I used to do network engineering and operations, and I had an accident, and technically two accidents. I had a car accident and then a fall, and I fell just wrong, just right, however you want to say it. But I literally went from living a full life to being a mess. On a good day, I could get out with my wheelchair or walker or cane. On a bad day, I didn't make it out of bed. I was on morphine for years, nerve ablations, infusions, injections, and basically my doctor said there was nothing they could do for me.
Oh.
And that's what made me really start looking out of the box and just looking at anything that I could find, from diet to supplements to the last thing that I would have thought, which would be my mind.
Wow. And so what did you just start doing that shifted your healing process? Like, was there, one moment in particular? Was it a series of moments? And like, what, I'm just curious, like, what sort of emotions you worked through?
Absolutely. There were so many key insights because when I first started working on healing with the mind, I thought it was all about belief. There's the placebo, and I had been reading metaphysics at the time, so it was, seeing yourself healed and picturing yourself healed, and so I was doing a lot of visualization and belief and affirmations and telling myself I was healed because I really thought that's why the placebo worked and whatnot. And I did that for more than a year, and well over a year, and it wasn't working. And then I found something called the open label placebo, which is exactly like it sounds, open label. So both the doctor and the patient both know it's fake and it still works. And so that was one of my epiphanies. It was just like, okay, well, this can't be all about belief. And I would say I had so many different pivots throughout because after that I started then meditation and binaural beats and music and frequency and guided meditations. And I mean, I was just went into that where I was doing it for hours and hours and hours a day. And I would say another um, awareness, another epiphany was that during my injury, a friend of mine, her aunt was passing, and she called me up and she asked me if I wanted to say goodbye because her aunt was passing from lung cancer.
Mm.
And as I went to go say goodbye, so she picked me up, she took me there, and I saw this woman, and just a beautiful being who had been working on positive thinking and who had also been, in hospice for a few months. And I thought, as I saw her, I thought, gosh, this is probably what I look like, sitting here doing positive thinking and visualization. And she was in this deep state of relaxation, which was kind of what I looked like, in theta
Mm.
state all day and trying to just stay so relaxed and get my body to heal. And I'd say that was another, like, there was so many just pivots of thinking and really bringing in the awareness that what I needed to do was different. And that's what made me say, okay, I need to instead of just randomly working with my mind and trying to visualize and which is great, but meditate and all of these things, I need to understand it. And I would say that the pivot that really took place was when I started to simplify it. And I said, okay, I know that emotions affect the body differently. If somebody's embarrassed, that's a blushing face. Even emojis know that. So we all know that's well known. Panic attack, racing heart, shortness of breath, sexual feelings. There's a physical response different for men than it is for women, but there's a physical response. And so it was clear that different emotions could affect the body differently. And so that's what I started to look at. Is I said, okay, well, what emotions could affect my body? So that was one pivot, and just awareness. Another key thing was this, is that I could look at everything objectively and I could say, okay, we know that stress affects the physical body, but there are also people who are extremely stressed, who even have trauma, who aren't physically sick. And there are people also who are happy, who have serious illnesses. How is that even possible? And what I began to realize is that it was all about the certain combination of emotions, that was the key.
Mm.
And a simple analogy that I always use is, if you think about somebody who wants to make cake, if they have flour, they can't make cake. But if they have flour and they mix it with certain ingredients, now they can make cake. And of course, illness is not cake, but point being is it's just a combination. And so, of course, different ingredients creates a completely different recipe. And that's how I saw illness. So it was really about identifying multiple emotions and then changing those. And that's what's the pivot. And remembering also that they're in the subconscious mind. I mean, what was affecting me had to do with 9/11. And
Mm.
that would not have made sense to my conscious mind. I didn't realize the events from 9/11 were even affecting me.
Can you say more about that, Brandy? Like, how did they affect you?
You know, this is how if you had asked me at the time if they were affecting me, I would have said definitely not. But especially because I wasn't even in New York at the time that it happened. However, I mentioned that I worked in network engineering and operations, and my shift was 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. out here in California, which put me in the office when the towers went down. And I was actually talking to a colleague when the plane hit, and then my colleague just started, yelling like, "Help me, help me, help me!" And then the phone went dead. And so that, it was this moment. But then, and of course, I didn't know what was going on at first, but there was so much. And then I would say that probably impacted me. But then what further impacted me was that we were surrounded by televisions. And after that, I just wanted to help people, help people get their network back up, do whatever I could, because having communication at that time was so important in that area also. And so I was just trying to help and do what I could. But in the building that we worked on, it was important for us to know the current events. And so there was televisions literally on every pillar in the building, pretty much. And so the footage from 9/11 played over and over and over and over again. And additionally, afterwards, we had like this, I don't know if you remember, Yasmin, but it was like we were in red zone or orange of our level of threat,
Right.
of terrorist threat. And so in the back of my mind, it was like, oh, we're going to die. It was all of this stuff that was going on. And so basically those were the emotions: that we're going to die, that I wanted to die to save people, that I also had survivor's guilt. I felt bad for my colleagues, and then I felt guilty for surviving. I mean, it was just this mix of emotions that I didn't realize got stored in my subconscious mind.
Wow. That's fascinating. And it's also fascinating that you don't know like what events could actually stir up these cocktail of emotions. And you mentioned like the TV screen, which like when you're seeing these visualizations on repeat over and over again, I mean, it is really powerful. Those symbolic messages that we're immersing ourselves in all day. So, wow. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the topics in your book, which is so powerful. So for those of you listening, definitely have to check out Brandy's book. And you speak a little bit about light energy and cell proliferation. What does light energy have to do with healing? I'm curious.
This is what's incredible is, when we talk about the topic of energy, a lot of people think that it's just woo woo. And what's amazing is the man who discovered it, the medical scientist who discovered it in the medical community, was actually nominated for the Nobel Prize 11 times. And not only that, but energy, the light energy, or now it's called biophotons from the body, it's even in a database that's covered under the NASA agreement. So, I mean, starting with that, with light energy of the body, just wanting to start with that, just because so many people think it is woo woo. In fact, I was actually speaking with a medical scientist recently who had read my book, and he was shocked. He was surprised. He said, how is it that I've been a medical scientist for 40 years and I didn't even know that biophotons existed from the body? So what's amazing is we do have this energy emitting from the body, and it's incredible. But there's a few things that are really fascinating about it, such as different illnesses can emit different energies. So, people with type 2 diabetes have different biophoton emissions than people without type 2 diabetes, or cancer cells emit different frequencies than non cancerous cells. And not only that, but research has found a correlation between our thoughts and emotions, and also this energy that emits from our bodies. And so there's so many things. Another thing is that in studies, they have shown that this light energy has the ability to influence cellular proliferation. And to give a kind of an easy illustration of cell proliferation, a simple way to picture it is like this: is if you imagine dish soap. If you pour water on dish soap, the cells or the bubbles proliferate, so it grows and expands. And so with healing, that's what our body does. We have mitosis of cells, or cell proliferation, where they grow and divide and grow and divide and whatnot. And so this light energy has been shown to be able to influence cell proliferation, even in plants and animals, and even in the body. And I mean, there's so many fascinating things about it. Also, and to give kind of further picture of this light energy, a simple way to think about it is kind of to give a visual is like this, is if we think about a light bulb emits particles of light. So we call those photons. Or the sun emits particles of light. Those are photons. Now, a living organism, so a biological organism, emits biophotons. So just little particles of light that are invisible. And so these little particles of light have been shown that they can influence all of these things. That different illnesses are connected to different patterns of light energy are connected to different illnesses. And also research suggests that these biophotons, this light energy, can communicate information throughout the body. Now, what's also fascinating about that, a lot of people might think, how is it even possible for light energy to communicate information throughout the body, such as homeostasis? And yet, if you think about the internet and cell phone and emails and all of that, phone, TV is all run on fiber optics, which is light energy. And so information is spread throughout our world using light energy. And it's interesting that research suggests that this light energy is also sending information, such as homeostasis and repair and healing, all of these things throughout our bodies. So, there's just so many fascinating things about biophotons, including the fact that our own minds and emotions can actually influence biophoton emissions.
So that's so fascinating, Brandy. Love it. I love that you have like scientific language about this concept of energy, which I think is so talked about right now in culture. And what can you tell us about the positive and negative impact of light healing? How do our minds influence this light healing?
Absolutely. There's been research studies that even show that, one study, for example, showed that when participants were visualizing white light, they had higher amount of emissions out of the right side of their head than they did the left. Or things like anger, for example. When participants were experiencing increased anger, it actually increased their biophoton emissions. Now, there's a couple of things that I love about this is we can see the correlation between emotions and biophotons, or this light energy. So we can see the correlation. The other thing is that there's a lot of misconceptions about energy. So I've heard people over and over say something like, for healing, all I have to do is send energy or just increase my energy. And yet it's a little bit more complex than that, because if we think about it, anger can increase biophoton emissions. It can increase light energy. And so, understanding that just really our thoughts and emotions help direct this energy and shift this energy. And so it comes back to the awareness again of emotions, and realizing that not only can our emotions impact our biochemical responses in our body and biochemical release, but also our biophotons, and which communicate information throughout the body. And so there's just, it kind of ties everything back to emotions and mindset.
So, okay. So what about if let's say someone listening in is like, I keep having this default emotional stage, right? Like whatever they're in, maybe it's neutrality, or maybe it's like fear, or whatever it is. Like what's like a tip or two that teach people to do in real time so that they could shift immediately out of negative states? And how do you help people, or what's like the process for helping them kind of stick to that new emotional state?
Great questions. Okay, so there's a which direction to go there. Okay, so a few things. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this is why I'm pausing, because you use the example of fear. This is what I would say is emotions work also a lot different than many people realize. And which of course is why we see so many people who unfortunately struggle with things like depression, and they can't get out of it. Our minds work in a different way. And I would say this, I would say, okay, so to create a shift, let's talk about to create a shift. What I would say is we really need to shift to be able to shift towards a positive. We need to do a few things. We need to remember that our brains work with neural pathways. And so a lot of times when people try to shift towards the positive, they try to just think of, stay in positive thinking. They go, I'm just going to be positive about things. I'm just going to be positive. I'm just going to be positive. The problem is just being positive isn't necessarily a pattern, an emotional pattern. And our brains work in patterns. And so instead, what a person would want to say is they would want to bring a specific emotion in over and over and over again and start ingraining that in the mind so it becomes automatic. And a simple way to think about that is if we think about the alphabet. After we do the alphabet once, it's not automatic. But if we do it over and over and over again, it becomes automatic. Now we can start creating a real shift because it becomes automatic. And so that is key, because what happens with our minds is they have a tendency to not only repeat emotional patterns, but return to even painful patterns. And a simple way to illustrate that is we could look at the well-known awareness in psychology that unfortunately a woman might have an abusive father and leave him and find the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, et cetera, et cetera. That pattern can continue, but we could also unfortunately have a pattern of criticism or abandonment or rejection or guilt or whatever that is. And those patterns can continue. Even during my own issue with 9/11, part of mine was guilt that I also had come up, survivor's guilt. And that was a pattern for me as a child, And so we can have these patterns, and that's the way our brain works. So then to be able to shift into the positive, then we have to create positive patterns to really embody the shift. Now, you mentioned, how do I have people make a fast shift? And this is what I do even with people in their health, is I'll identify whatever the emotion is. What are the problematic emotions? And then I help them to realize that the emotion is not serving them and it's not safe, and instead to see and feel in a different way. And I know that sounds initially very simple. There are also complications to it, but that's even what I do under medical equipment. So, and kind of to give you an idea of how I demonstrate this under medical equipment, with medical thermography, something I'll do is medical thermal imaging is basically, it detects heat from the body. And so let's say somebody has a sprained ankle, it can emit heat, or an infection or illness in the body, it emits heat. And so medical thermal imaging shows that heat at a very advanced level from the body. So if somebody has neck pain, then on the scan, it shows red over their neck area. And what I've been able to do is I've been able to just show people how to use their mind to let go of the emotions, whatever those negative emotions are, to start creating that shift. And you can literally, in real time, you'll see the scan turn from red to green as their pain goes away. And so that's what I would say is creating a shift. We need to think of shifting neural pathways, establishing new neural pathways, and also identifying specific thoughts and emotions and transforming them.
Wow. And that requires like a sense of, diligence and commitment, right? To really sit and immerse yourself. When you've worked with people and you've found their emotion, whatever's been holding them back, how quickly can people transform? I mean, you're showing like the thermal imaging. So of course, like in real time, people can transform. I'm curious though, do people have to continue doing the work on a day-to-day basis for a period of time of really sitting in this new emotional space, or does it, what have you seen based on your
So
work?
I would typically say yes. So the responsible answer is absolutely yes. Creating that change, you've got to get that in over and over and over again. And that's a typical answer. And I would also say that I have worked with people to where we've shifted their mindset, and they have said, okay, look, I see things in a different way. and they've just embodied the change. And I know this may sound impossible, but if we go back to multiple personality disorder, where a person can have pain in one personality or illness in one personality, but not another. I mean, I've literally seen people who've made radical shifts. If I'm working with somebody under medical equipment, in the study that I had published in the medical journal last year, I think, one of the volunteers was able to release all of her pain under medical equipment in 22 minutes,
Wow.
approximately. I think another one, he went from like a level 6 of pain to a 0 of pain in 28 minutes. But then there was one also that took 47 minutes. And,
Wow.
so it depends. But that's what I always tell people, is that if you go back into the negative, it will come back, typically. And so the typical answer is yes, it takes reinforcing. Yes, it takes embodying the change. Yes, if there are patterns and underlying patterns, you're definitely going to want to transform and eradicate them. And a way to think about it is like anxiety. If somebody has a panic attack and they're experiencing that, but then they let go of the panic, then it can stop. But if they go back into it again, it can come back. And that's the same way to think about it.
Fascinating. And I'd love to also ground this into an example with me, if you're open to it. Do you would you be open to it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anywhere you want to go.
I'm like, be gentle, but no, I did have 2 knee surgeries, and I'm curious what you see in those knee surgeries, if you see anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, bingo. Yes. Bingo. There's a pattern of feeling really hard on yourself, very self-critical. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of a way to think about it is like this: is imagine somebody's trying to stand tall and yet they're criticizing themselves. It's like buckling the knees underneath you.
Yep.
And so that I would say, bingo. I would say shifting that is going to be important for you to be as tall as you want to be in this lifetime. And by the way, I have worked with people. I have seen the most amazing things. This is something that I always tell people is this, and even my process with healing is called the gift in healing. And it's because the way I look at healing is like a check engine light on a car, if you will. Like, if you're driving a car and the check engine light comes on, it tells you that something is off that you really need to fix. And similarly, when we have some type of health issue, when we identify whatever pattern or programming is going on and we identify that and we change it, it becomes a life-changing gift. And so I've literally worked with people who've had patterns such as self-criticism or all kinds of patterns, but taking the pattern and then transforming it. And it's like, imagine if somebody spent the next 60 years of their life having a pattern of self-criticism or a pattern of self-love and just feeling good about self and self-kindness and self-support, who they become. And so what I love is that anytime we identify one of these patterns of something that is off and we embrace it fully, it just becomes a life-changing gift. And that's what I love about working in health, is that it's like it highlights the pattern that you have to change it. It does take a genuine change, but it becomes pivotal. And so I love that.
I love that. That's amazing. So cool. So, well, thank you so much for that. And so people who are listening, you can kind of see this is like a tip of the iceberg of what Brandy does. And I've seen it also live in person. And I think that on your website, you even have like case studies of like reducing, cancer tumors.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
All kinds of so the one that was actually a benign tumor. The one on the testimonial one was a benign tumor in her throat. But then there are, but I've worked with all kinds of things. And this is what I would say is other people are doing it. For example, we've all heard stress can affect cancer. We've heard that stress can affect autoimmune conditions and flare-ups and all of these things. And basically, if we've known that for thousands of years, I mean, it's literally written in the Bible, a merry heart is a medicine to the body, ill thoughts will dry the bones. And it's literally written 3,000 years ago. And it's just basically what I've been able to do is figure out how to understand that there's a combination, that that's key, and that making a change and what that looks like and how to do it. And so so my point is, though, is that we know this on some levels. We've known that stress affects the physical body, and now it's just going, okay, well, what is the formula for undoing that and then getting the body to heal itself? And I think a lot of times we think, well, the body healing itself is going to take a really, really long time. And then we go back to the awareness of multiple personality disorder and say, wait a second, a person can literally have high blood sugar in one personality, but not in another, or high blood pressure or allergies or I mean, all kinds of things in one personality and not another. And we can see that the body can just make radical shifts. And so also on my website, you'll see there's all kinds of testimonials. And then also there is a tab that's called See Live Healing, where I actually work with somebody under medical equipment who has neck pain. And I showed her how to use her own mind to release the pain. And that was like 8 years ago, and the pain never came back, and she's happy. And so it's incredible.
Mm, that's amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, for folks listening, we'll also include the website in the show notes. And Brandy, are there any other, remarkable cases that you can remember that you've witnessed, and like maybe just a couple anecdotes for us too of folks who, had like a really, big kind of, I don't know, crisis or something, and they emerged from it, changed?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say first and foremost this. A lot of times, to me, what is remarkable is even the idea and the awareness that we can heal. I mean, there are 1.5 billion people who live in pain, and I lived life in pain. And I would say remarkable is when you feel happy to live life again, when pain is gone, when suffering's gone. And so I would say that. But have I seen people get their surgeries canceled? Absolutely. Another remarkable that we could call remarkable is a woman I worked with who had POTS, tachycardia, and also mast cell, and all kinds of allergies and pain and all of these things, was bedridden, supine for almost 8 years. And her body also did not make enough blood. And so even if she got a transfusion, she would still have low blood volume. And so if your body does not make enough blood and you sit up, what happens is all of the blood goes down and you pass out. And
Wow.
so that was her life. So she was supine for about 8 years, and now she is fine. Her medical tests are all great. She can run, she can fly, not actually physically fly. I mean, on an airplane. So I want to say, hey, you're going to work with your mind, and you will develop the ability to fly. No, she can fly an airplane.
Yes, yeah, that's so funny. I'm like, wow, sign me up.
Right? So I've learned how to fly. But no, she can fly on air. But that was part of what she wanted to do, was go to Europe. I mean, and
Oh,
she's not the only person. There's another one who's like, she loves to walk her. Like,
mm,
it's amazing just to go from bedridden to walking, running. Amazing. I've seen people with RA message in and say, "Oh my gosh, I've been in your video course for 2 weeks, and I can, like," and they have feet that started out so swollen they couldn't walk, and they're like, "Now I can walk. I can walk up the stairs, and I can do these things." And then they message in another month later, and they go, "Oh my gosh, I just got my blood work checked. I don't have any pain, and my RA numbers are all normal, and my doctor can't figure it out." And so
wow.
um, amazing things. And by the way, that's why I always tell people, I say, as you make these changes, continue seeing your doctors. Make your doctor your friend. Tell them you're working with your mind, and blow their mind with what you're able to do with your mind. And it's truly incredible.
That's amazing, Brandy. I'm also curious, did anything change since coming out of the pandemic? Have people been, worse off from a mental health perspective, or have you not kind of noticed any significant change?
I mean, I would say yes. I would say one unfortunately good thing that has come out of it is that the Surgeon General released a report last year saying that loneliness is an epidemic. I mean, not just an epidemic, but that loneliness is a public health risk, and that it increases type 2 diabetes and coronary heart disease and all of these things. And so while this is not great, what is happening that is good is that for a long time we have overlooked the seriousness of emotions, even though we've known stress affects the physical body. And there's even, psychoneuroimmunology was established in the 70s proving that stress can impact the immune system, all of these things. In our culture, we've largely downplayed the effects that they have. And the awareness now that even the Surgeon General is saying, hey, loneliness can affect your health in a serious way, even to the point of early death and all of these things. So I would say, yes, unfortunately, we have seen a lot of impact. Part of it was because of the loneliness. Part of it is because many people can still feel disconnected. But I would say, at least on a unfortunate but positive note, the medical community is now at least starting to say, hey, yeah, emotions, loneliness, they're a more serious issue than we've given them credit for. And we can so the extreme social isolation that a lot of countries went through um, help unfortunately showed data that then supported
Yeah.
all of that. So I would say there are many changes. There are some people, and of course each person is different. Some people are back to life and doing everything. Some people are still traumatized. It depends on who experienced what.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah. It's been such an interesting journey just to witness like the world moving away from, being in the same spaces, right? Community gatherings and community spaces and all that. Because especially since most people at least in the, I would say like the having desk jobs, a lot of people are remote working now. So not seeing as many people in their day to day, which I'm sure is contributing to this loneliness epidemic. So it's just interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Not needing to leave the house or anything. Absolutely.
Right, right, right. So, Brandy, last couple questions. I know we're at time, but I'm curious, what sort of things have surprised you the most looking back on this journey?
That is such a great question. What things have surprised me the most? Um, I would say, one thing, I mean, I guess what things have surprised me the most? It's so hard to put into words because the idea that I could actually heal myself was to me kind of shocking. Because healing with the mind, especially after I had a physical accident and a physical injury, still blew my mind that it actually worked. I mean, basically, I had tried everything, diet, supplements, everything, and every nerve ablation infusion, just everything I could. And I didn't necessarily do mind body healing because I thought it would work, except for, the more I started seeing the science behind it. But I still, just a part of me still really doubted that it could heal my physical body. And yet it really worked. And I would say that it actually worked, because I just basically said, what do I have to lose? Let me just do this. What do I have to lose? Nothing. And so I would say that was one thing. And then after I healed myself, I thought, okay, well, hypothetically, based on multiple personality disorder, I should be able to get results and help people to get results in a short period of time. And so I would say that, or even showing it under medical equipment for the first time. I wasn't sure if it was going to report that quickly. I mean, for somebody to be in physical pain and to use their mind, and that you could see it on a live scan, especially because it's generating heat from the neck. I wasn't sure if it would take a while to report back. And so what's been fascinating is watching it under medical equipment. Not only can you see it go away quickly, but it can also come back very quickly. So if I trigger somebody back into the negative, it shows up on the scan immediately. And so I would say that was surprising. I have seen people who have had all kinds of, just tumors or whatnot. They are scheduled for some type of surgery, and suddenly one shrinks and it's gone, or and then it's quick. And I'm not trying to, and I've also seen people who have taken a while to change. I mean, I think we can summarize it like this. If you've ever tried to change somebody who didn't want to change,
Right.
we all know that, all the time we hear women, they
Right.
start dating a man and they want to change him. And it's like, good luck. It's not. So we've all tried to change somebody who didn't want to change. And it's like, it's good luck. It's not going to happen. But then we've also seen people who are very motivated and want to change and really embrace the change. And that can happen very fast. So I would say, everybody's different, but I would say that just radical results. It's nothing almost surprises me anymore, just because I think God, universe, divine energy, whatever you want to call it, our bodies are so incredible, and
Mm.
I get to see healing all of the time, and it's become my new norm. So I feel very blessed by that.
So awesome. That's so cool, Brandy. So happy that you exist in this world and have helped so many people. And what do you want to tell our listeners about their health and wellness? Like, what's your main takeaway or call to action for those who are listening right now?
This is what I would say. It used to be, we used to think it was impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. So if you've heard of the 4 minute mile before, where for a long time, human beings thought that it was physically impossible for the human body to run that fast. And then Roger Bannister did it in the 1950s. And after he did, there were several other people who did it too. So, the awareness that we can do something is incredible. Now, of course, if you ask me, could I run a mile in 4 minutes right now? The answer is no, because I have not trained. There is a skill to it.
Right.
And so believing that we can do it is one thing. And then also having the skill to do it is another thing. But it's pivotal. And what I would say is, you know, again, there's information in metaphysics or quantum physics or written in the Bible. We know that our minds have an incredible ability. And the reason that I've shown it back to back to back to back to back under medical equipment is because I want people to see, hey, we can get results. It's not necessarily that hard. We just have to really understand how to do it. And and I see people do that all the time, where they heal themselves, and they message in and they say, oh my gosh, I just healed my headaches, or I've gotten rid of pain and my pain is gone. Or just somebody today said, oh, there was a lump in my left breast and now it's gone. And so just all kinds of things, they're doing it. And I would say, just this information has been around for thousands of years. And my hope is that it's our generation at this point in time that we understand how to use and master our minds. And we really make that change for our generation, and for younger generations, that instead of saying this information's been around 3,000 years and we still haven't learned how to use it, that we in this generation say, hey, this information has been around 3,000 years. And guess what? We've embodied it. We've created a change. We are the change. We're doing it, and it's become a new norm. That's what I'd love to see.
I love that. Amen. Oh, amazing. Well, Brandy, where can people find you? Are there any resources you can point folks to in order to learn more about you, your courses, your book, all of it?
Absolutely. My website is brandygillmore.com. And Gilmore is spelt with two L's. So GILLMORE.com. My book is everywhere books are sold: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, anywhere that books are sold. And I would say, if you're somebody whether you're new to the healing with the mind or you've been studying it for a long period of time, I hear people who all the time say, I've been doing this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And finally, I get it. I understand now how to get results. And they do. And they make that change. Or people who are new to it. Even earlier today, there was a woman who said, my husband has never believed in mind body healing. And he saw my results. He was shocked. So he got your book. And now he's into it and he can't believe it. Like, so wherever you are in your journey, that's what I would say, is just understand it. And I have courses, I have workshops, I have a book. The more we educate ourselves on how incredible we all are, the more we can do with our own minds.
Amen. And I can also attest, I feel like I have been a witness to so many different types of modalities and healers, and you're like 20 years ahead of the curve. So it's just really remarkable and so humble, really, so humble. Thank you so much for your time, Brandy. This was an absolute delight. I'm so grateful for you, and I probably could have talked for another couple hours. So I really appreciate your time.
I'm certain that we could have talked for another couple hours because Yasmin, you have a thank you for saying that, and you have such a beautiful, caring heart, and
Oh,
that's what we did last time we got together. Talked for a few hours, just and about so many things, and it's just you're beautiful, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you bring to the world. So, and thank
oh,
you for having me.
oh, thank you so much, Brandy. Thank you. Thank you. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about the mind body connection and how to heal with Brandy Gillmore. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one on one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well being, and spirituality. Thanks again.